a templo sancto Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. Speak, Lord, your servant is listening. You have the message of eternal life. Alleluia, Alleluia, Alleluia. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. Glory to you, O Lord. Jesus said, "What is the kingdom of God like? And to what shall I compare it? It is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his garden, and it grew and became a tree. And the birds of the air made nests in its branches." And again he said, "To what shall I compare the kingdom of God? It is like leaven, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal, till it was all leavened." The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. If one compares Christian civilization and the culture of lands permeated by the gospel grace, if one compares them with that of cultures which have been influenced by other forces, there is a profound difference. When one is used to hearing of forgiveness, love, generosity, even turning the other cheek, clothing the naked, feeding the hungry, visiting prisoners, then over a time the norms are such that that society is a small reflection of the goodness and bounty of the Blessed Trinity, the which is served in the way desired by heaven. When one sees the enmity of the fallen angel, the hatred and pure envy that he has for us human beings and for the means of our salvation, then one sees something of what is at work in the destruction of that culture. This day, the 31st of October, has in recent times been renamed Hell Day. It is the subtle but by now explicit honouring of the fallen angel. Another culture, ugliness, le macabre, death, torment, darkness, blackness, the haggard, the awful, the frightening, bad company, exalted and given as something to be celebrated, even by the innocent and the pure, the children who have just come from heaven. I was pleasantly surprised years ago to hear that the authorities in North Wales did not actually encourage the celebration of Halloween in the primary schools because of the confusion in the minds of children. Alas, we're up against it because massively culture has gone in that way, to such an extent that they've introduced in Ireland a new bank holiday. It was yesterday. And whereas by now it is not politically correct to mention Christ at Xmas, it is perfectly correct to honour publicly, everywhere and in every way, even by a public holiday, Lucifer and his day. It is perhaps interesting that it was this day that Providence 20 years ago chose for my being set apart to serve at the altar. And there, in the Cathedral of Siena, rich in history, dense in prayer, as one lies on one's nose before the high altar, one hears the whole army of saints passing over one. People like Catherine, people like Bernardino, those who had marched unto glory on that same holy ground and had prayed in that ancient cathedral. Even my Protestant family was deeply moved, for they too could feel something of the power of the centuries and something greater than our local little boxes in Wales. The chapels, where certainly grace passes, but often through a human channel. Here one sensed, especially at the moment of priestly consecration, that it was nothing at all to do with man alone, but all the power of the Trinity was at work. One of my former confreres in the Charterhouse wrote to me a few days earlier and said this: the priesthood is a mystery. Even though priests die, the mystery carries on from one new priestly head to another. And so it is that Trinitarian grace and power reaches to the end of time and to all corners of the earth, to the laying on of hands, which on the last resort are the hands of Christ the High Priest himself, coming down by the apostolic succession from the upper room. A few years earlier, my friend from school days had been ordained in the Anglican priesthood, and around the same time as myself, a classmate, or at least a helper in study in university in Bangor, had been ordained, a lady actually, for the Anglican priesthood in Bangor. But she later on converted to the Catholic faith, aware of what my friend, the other one, was half aware of, but did not have the courage actually to leave the huge baggage of culture that involved, because his father and his grandfather had been Anglican priests before him. But secretly they knew it wasn't quite the same. How can it be? If one tortures, if one racks, if one interrogates, and in the end hangs, draws and quarters human beings who, when caught in the act of celebrating what here is happening quietly in this little chapel, could not happen without being an act of high treason. What is the problem with celebrating Holy Mass? It's a problem because old Nick doesn't want it, and so right now he's showing ever more his hatred for it. And the hosts disappearing over this weekend to be used in horrible satanic rites are his bliss and glory in reverse. He hates the Blessed Sacrament. He loves it when it's given in the hand and trampled underground, when it's littered around the churches, when it ends up in orgies of awful sacrilege in these dark rites, in which even on this night human sacrifice is involved. Sacrifice of little girls conceived in satanic rites, never registered, and offered on the altar of Moloch, just as he wants in Ireland right now the blood of the innocent to be offered in sacrifice ultimately to him in legalized abortion, a painless medical treatment to get rid of a little problem and to have freedom to be in control and to be God, deciding what is morally valuable and in